Vikes Now. I am Dustin Baker. This is the March 28th edition. We are about 4 weeks away from the NFL draft. 1 month away yesterday. I should have said that at the top of the show. What was I thinking? But what we're going to chat about today, and some of you may not like this topic. I know that a program like this probably has a strong viewership of Kirk Cousins loyalists. And of course, this episode is not to denounce Cousins, but it is here to explore the feasibility of a first-round trade so that the Vikings can nab the quarterback of the future after Cousins. And here's why we're talking about this in the first place. So, since the beginning of the offseason, whether it is Mark Wilf on Good Morning Football or even today, Kevin O'Connell, none of the Vikings leadership has been committal about Kirk Cousins into 2024. He's probably, Mr. Cousins, probably going to be the quarterback in September, and he could light it up. Second year continuity on offense with Kevin O'Connell. The first time Cousins has had continuity, my goodness, since what, 2015, 2016 on offense, whether it's the offensive line or the play caller. So yes, you should probably expect Cousins to show up and do his usual dance. I usually have the quote of 30 touchdowns, 4,000 passing yards. Maybe in year two, it's even more. And if he balls out, they get to the Super Bowl, win the thing, whatever, they can extend him about 11 months from now. That's always on the table. But the words of the decision makers, Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, Kevin O'Connell, and the Vikings ownership, plus the actions, which is no contract extension to date, that usually happens for Kirk around March 12th, 13th, or 14th. It didn't happen. They pushed money into the future so that if Cousins does leave next year, there will be a $28.5 million cap hit on the books no matter what. So yes, you're gonna bemoan it. You're gonna look down at the Vikings financial ledger and be like, we're paying this guy $29 million not to play here. It doesn't exactly work like that. He's getting the money regardless, and it's already happened, but it will appear on the books that he's getting paid not to play. Cross that bridge when we get there. So, because of the actions and the words, there is a growing possibility that Minnesota selects a quarterback in the 2023 NFL draft. So this episode is to show schematically how that would happen with trade partners or lack thereof. So, where do we stand? I'm not getting into Lamar Jackson today. I really don't think he's going to end up with the Vikings. Trey Lance could happen. It sounds like the 49ers are still high on Brock Purdy, or maybe those two will just have some version of a battle at some point when Brock Purdy's healthy. So I'm sticking strictly with the rookie quarterback thing because, as I've said before, the Vikings have this very rare opportunity for them, maybe not rare around the league, but for them to have the best of both worlds, where Kirk Cousins does his usual stuff in 2023 at the age of 35, and then there is a guy waiting in the wings. This is how the Chiefs did it in 2017. This is how the Packers did it with Favre and Rodgers. So why not the Vikings? Why would you wait until next year when Cousins won't be on the books, and then you're forced to reach or draft your guy, whoever that may be, in next year's draft? I get it. Next year's draft is supposed to be dazzling for quarterbacks, but we always say that. I was told this year was going to be just this holy grail of quarterbacks. And now we're already saying, well, wait till next year because that one's even better. We always have this vision of the next quarterback draft being awesome, when in reality, who knows? So here, in order, in terms of how this would happen, let's go through these destinations. So I'm under the impression that Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, when he does decide, whether that is 4 weeks from now or a year and 4 weeks from now, that it really won't matter what the price tag is when you trade up to get your guy. Now, this is their guy. If they're thinking about it right now, they've already circled him. You and me, we're talking about, well, one of the four guys, let's go get him. That's not how they're thinking. They're not thinking, all right, well, if one of them falls, let's go get him and see what happens. No, they've targeted their guy, probably like on an FBI-looking whiteboard, with all of the ties and the circles, like The Sopranos. And they're saying, all right, so Will Levis, let's just use Levis. I don't know if that's their guy. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But in the draft, so the Vikings have the 23rd pick. Not great. It's a rotten spot in this draft to find a quarterback unless one falls. If they really wanted to not dink around, they could trade up to the number 3 spot for the the Arizona Cardinals. Now, what will that cost? That's probably going to cost about 3 first-rounders, 2023, 24, 25, and then maybe the Vikings get like a 4th or 5th rounder to offset the trade calculators. And that would mean maybe that Will Levis is the guy they identified, because most right now presume C.J. Stroud will probably go number 1 overall, and then Bryce Young at number 2. Well, if the Vikings have circled Levis, then they got to get in front of the Colts. And to do that, you could trade about 3 first-rounders to the Cardinals to get Levis, and then we'll do what is inevitably coming. You hope they pick the right guy. Now, this logic can be transposed. Perhaps, you remember Thomas Davis, the linebacker for the Panthers? Well, about a week ago, he predicted his former team, the Panthers, at number 1 are going to do something funky, something creative with the first overall pick, which to me sounds like Anthony Richardson or Will Levis. In that vein, then Bryce Young would go number 2 to the Texans, and Stroud would be available at 3. The Vikings send 3 first-rounders to the desert to land their guy. The next option, if they don't want to get that rich, I don't want to trade 3 first-rounders, you can get away with a reduced package to the Lions at number 6. The Lions have 2 draft picks, and I'm going to talk about both of them in this episode. But the goal would be to get in front of, let's see, which team is that? Oh, I had it here. Hold on. Ooh, I lost it. The Raiders. So we don't know if the Raiders are going to stick with Jimmy Garoppolo and just do the Spider-Man meme with Derek Carr and Jimmy Garoppolo. I don't know how that's that big of a difference. And Carr is even more durable than Garoppolo. But yeah, if the other option, or the second highest on the list, would be to trade with the Lions to get in front of the Raiders to get whatever guy the Vikings have identified. That would probably cost 2 firsts and a second or a third. Not quite as rich as the Cardinals price tag, but the goal is to get in front of the Raiders so they don't scoop whichever guy the Vikings have identified. Now, this is further down the list. This means the Colts would have picked the 3rd quarterback, and this would only be a viable scenario if Richardson's off the board and Levis falls to number 6, or the Vikings have identified Richardson as the guy from Florida, Anthony Richardson, and they climb the board up to number 6 to get him from Detroit. But yeah, that'll cost about 2 firsts and then a second or third to get that high. And again, the goal is to get in front of the Raiders. The next one is under the pretense that somebody unknown falls quarterback-wise, and whichever guy falls is the one that the Vikings want. And that would be at number 10 to the Eagles. And I believe that this would cost 2 first-rounders to get to the 10th pick. Maybe a little bit more, like a 4th or a 5th for deal sweetener. But I think that's pretty much what the cost of Justin Fields was in a similar spot 2 years ago. You want to get in front of the Titans, who pick at 11, who have Ryan Tannehill, who appears to be winding her down, Malik Willis, who looked like utter shit last year. So you'd want to get to the Eagles pick, who you can probably get for 2 first-rounders, and then whichever guy has fallen, probably Levis, probably Richardson, boom, you strike, and you don't have to give up that extra 3rd draft pick that was necessary to the Cardinals or the Lions. You with me? So trading with the Eagles at 10 to get in front of the Titans. The next one, also the Lions. So the one thing to remember about every single draft in NFL history is they get funky. Right now, you're sitting there and so, like, if I said something like, "Oh yeah, what if C.J. Stroud falls to number 3, or what if he falls all the way to 6?" There will be draft people who tell me I'm insane, and I get it. It doesn't seem like that's going to happen, but drafts are unpredictable. Nobody in the world thought Daniel Jones was going at number 6 in the 2019 NFL draft. Nobody in the world thought Aaron Rodgers was going to fall all the way to 24 in the 2005 draft. So I'm here to tell you that these things are designed to be unpredictable. So in the event that somebody, the Vikings guy, whoever that is, whether it's probably not going to, Stroud and Young aren't going to fall that far. But if it's Richardson or Levis and they fall all the way down to 18, you could pull off a trade with the Lions to get in front of the Buccaneers. Because right now the Buccaneers are doing the Trask and Baker Mayfield thing. May the best man win that camp battle. But I don't think anybody's convinced that they wouldn't seize one of the big 4 quarterbacks if it fell to them all the way at 19. But if the Vikings trade into the 18th spot, they'd really only have to donate a first and probably a third to the Lions to go get the guy that has fallen, which is the one they identified already by now in the draft cycle. And both on these Lions tidbits, whether it's at 6 or at 18, We already know that Kwesi Adofo-Mensah has no problem whatsoever trading with NFC North foes. He did it last year to get Lewis Cine and to get the Lions' Jameson Williams when he could have just selected Kyle Hamilton, damn it. And then we're like, all right, well, this is weird trading with the Lions. He followed it up the next night, first order of business, trading with the Packers. So what are we doing? So he doesn't subscribe to the taboo reservations about, don't trade with the Packers and help them. He believes if you help yourself, who cares what the rest of the, trade compensation does for the other team? So if Richardson or Levis fall all the way down the board to 18 or 19, you can trade with the Lions to get in front of the Buccaneers and get whatever guy that they had circled. Now, the final two are boring, but they're the cheapest. So if you're a frugal guy or gal, listen, organically at 23, there is a chance that Richardson, or I guess Levis, that was the one that has been seen in mock drafts this week, Levis going all the way down to 23. I don't know what would cause that, but this would be probably the utopian scenario because the Vikings wouldn't have to trade anything. If they're just hanging out and one of the big four, I don't think two will fall, one of the big four, Stroud, Young, Levis, Richardson, falls all the way to 23. Don't have to spend anything other than your own pick. And then you could strike. I'm going to guess if it's all the way to this far, it'd probably be Richardson. And then you hope over a year watching Cousins and getting tutelage from Kevin O'Connell that he figures out his accuracy woes. Because it's so weird. Whenever the Richardson steam pops up on social media, you see all these glorious plays. So then I go and I start watching the tape and investigating them. And I'm like, why do we always show just the good stuff? There's a lot of gross things on here that we never put on Twitter. So yeah, and the guy isn't very accurate, but I guess the goal is that neither was Josh Allen, and then he figured it out, and then you just go with that hoopla and yay, hope it for the best. So organically at 23, and then the final option is, I don't know if I'd call it the most realistic, because I really think when Kwesi Adofo-Mensah is ready to do this thing, he will trade and go get the guy. I don't think they're going to willy-nilly, let's wait and see who falls to us. But in theory, it sounds like a Spielman thing to do, Kellen Mond. But if Hendon Hooker is around in round 3, Hooker in the 3rd, as folks have stated, then yeah, you could strike there, give him a redshirt year, get that ACL healed up, and then you could debut your 26-year-old quarterback week 1, 2024, Vikings versus blah, blah, blahs, Hooker as the QB1. And if it's not Hooker, then it doesn't really matter. The 4th, 5th, 6th round, you can get the dude from UCLA. You can try Clayton Tune, Jaren Hall. I don't know when he'll go off the board. I don't know how far Tanner McKee will fall, but he's just a college version of Cousins, not very mobile. I don't want Tanner McKee, which means they'll probably draft him now. But yeah, those are the options. You trade up to the Cardinals at 3. Really don't mess around. 3 first, blah, blah, blah. You go get Levis or Stroud, whoever falls to 3. Detroit at 6, Philadelphia at 10, Detroit at 18, because the goal is getting in front of these quarterback-needy teams so that team doesn't get them. Otherwise, organically at 23, if the draft really turns heads and one of the big 4 falls, or just some guy, Hendon Hooker, Clayton Tune, whoever's available after the first round, take a flyer pick, hope that you can, get Dak Prescott in a bottle or Kirk Cousins in a bottle, 4th rounder, 2012 NFL draft. But yeah, those are the feasible solutions. I also wrote about most of these on VikingsTerritory.com. I think there's a picture of Will Levis in the article if you're searching for it on the internet. But yeah, you're going to have to give up a lot of trade capital no matter what if you want to get into the top 10. Not quite as much with Detroit at 18. Otherwise, you just wait and you procrastinate and do this all again in the 2024 NFL draft, especially if Cousins isn't re-signed. Be back with Josh Fry tomorrow. We'll pick his brain about probably some of this draft steam and some of the, I guess, second wave dealings of free agency with the Vikings. That's all I got in Skol, baby.